Great. So let's start the last session of the day. And I would like to thank you all for being with us for almost 3 hours for this event so far. So our last session, I promise, is a good one. We have Erik Benner, who's an Oracle ACE director. And I think the oldest program members from what we had here today, he's been an Oracle ACE ever since 2015. So he's celebrating his 10th anniversary with us. Erik is currently VP of Enterprise Transformation at Mythics, and he's serving as lead strategist for federal, state, and local government and commercial customers throughout the United States. Erik, welcome, and thank you for being with us today. I know you are a busy bee.
Thank you for having me. I love doing these. I can't believe it's 10 years being in the ACE program. I totally lost track of that. It's gone by so fast. It's been a lot of fun, and I highly recommend if anyone is out there, you have any interest in being an ACE and you're happy to talk at conferences or present, please reach out to an ACE. Reach out to me, reach out to anyone in the program. We're happy to talk to you about what the program is and see about if you'd be a good fit to join. A lot of people are. It's not a full-time job unless you're an ACE director. Then that's a whole different story. But as an ACE professional, it's a great experience. You get to meet a lot of people, both technical people as well as people inside of Oracle. But for today, let's talk about building a knowledge-based AI and a little bit about that. So we'll do a quick little introduction for those that don't know me. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about how we build it, and we'll do a little demo and Q&A if we have time. So my name is Erik Benner. I work for Mythics. We're an Oracle partner. I'm the VP of Enterprise Transformation. I basically get to teach customers how to do really cool things to make things work better for them. I was the first ACE Cloud director, ACE director for cloud when that came available. And I've been working with Oracle technologies for a long, long time. I'm also an author. I have a book just came out last year on Oracle Linux. And then I have a book any day now, hopefully, is coming out with DevSecOps for OCI. And that's in the last phases with the publisher and Oracle's approvals. It's with Oracle Press, another Oracle Press book. So hopefully that'll be out soon behind it. I blog a lot at Tales from the Data Center, which is my technology blog. I also blog at work at blog.mythics.com. And I also am on Twitter and LinkedIn, though I've been more active on LinkedIn these days as Twitter became X out there. And somebody said, talk about fun things about yourself, whether being an ACE director and writing books and volunteering. So I'm also a glass blower as a hobby. There's a picture of me blowing glass. So yeah, I'm one of those guys that plays with hot fire and light, and I really enjoy playing with the light as it reflects through the glass when you make things. So if you find me at a conference, there's a good chance I carry around paperweights, often as little giveaways sometimes because they don't break easily. Vases tend to break when traveling. So I often have little giveaways sometimes at conferences for folks. So always track me down and see what I have on me. So let's talk about, I also work for Mythics. We're an Oracle partner, and I always put me in here because I'm doing this in the middle of the business day here. We're basically an Oracle partner. We focus in public sector, and we handle the whole technology stack for Oracle. So we help build it, we design it, we also help the transaction with Oracle to procure it, and we have all the services to maintain it and support it. And we do that for everything Oracle, whether it's software, like database or WebLogic, or we do cloud with OCI, or we do SaaS as well. So we do the ERP, an example, and HCM in the SaaS space, and often blend all those into an offering with a customer. And we also do a lot of Linux too, and virtualization, and pretty much everything else Oracle. So back to why you're here, which is let's talk about a KB or a knowledge base. And what is a knowledge base? Well, a knowledge base is an important thing. It's a central repository of data, whether it's structured or unstructured data. And the idea behind a knowledge base is that it's data that users can easily find information out of it. It helps users depending on the needs of the knowledge base. It's there to give them answers. It's there to give them helpful information. It also could be leveraged to also give them information if you're using a knowledge base and using a database itself as the source of truth for the knowledge base. A problem with traditional knowledge bases, and you have things like Wikipedia is in its essence a knowledge base, is people can't always find answers to the question. Often the right answer for what you're looking for comes from multiple locations. So you might have in a knowledge base a lot of information in 20 or 30 places about a process. Maybe it's an internal process for your EBS environment. Maybe it's something about your process for your business in the knowledge base. but you often find that the data, the answer comes from more than one location in that knowledge base. And I have a lot of customers that have built wikis over the years. But then you ask a question like, what's the process to approve a PO in eBusiness Suite? And they might have 7 or 8 documents in their wiki talking about that process because it's a complex process that has a lot of gotchas and you have different variations of that process depending on the needs of the business and the organization. And that becomes a challenge now when you're trying to search it because you search it and you might get different answers or you don't find all the information you need for the answer. And this is where having AI work with the knowledge base becomes very helpful because it can look at the entire knowledge base and kind of consolidate the answers into the right answer for what people are looking at doing. Sorry, part of that. So the idea behind a knowledge base is it has efficiency. It helps repetitive questions, things, functional things like how do I approve a PO or how do I request paid time off? It's helpful for that. It also gives a lot of self-service for users. And these could be end users in your organization. If you're a software company, it could be self-service of tech support. It could be your internal usage. It could be used by HR is a very popular place. Self-service. I want the knowledge base to tell me what the holidays are for the year. It also helps people share information because if you do it correctly, you're pulling the knowledge base in from a lot of different locations to enhance that data and enhance the knowledge base and makes it easier to share the information. And the value to the business, because you're going to spend money to build it, maintain, and support it, it also helps reduce cost because people can do self-service. There's less interaction. If somebody has a question, they can actually ask the knowledge base, often get the right answer out of the knowledge base faster than asking other people. So there's about a self-service too. That drives a lower cost, which is why businesses will let you get the funds in order to build something like this. So these are kind of why you're going to build a knowledge base in your organization behind it. You can access it a couple different ways. The technology I'm going to show a couple ways of doing it. One is there's a chat interface with OCI built into the cloud, and it's great for troubleshooting and testing the knowledge base, but it's not an interface I would use for production. It's an interface I would use to test it, to troubleshoot it, but I'm not going to point end users to it. End users, I'm going to use another method, and it's all based off of a RESTful API underneath it. But I'm going to access that through a couple ways. You can use Apex to access it. I'm going to show that, how Apex works to access the knowledge base. But that same knowledge base, you can use an OCI digital assistant, which is a really smart multi-skilled chatbot technology. Or you can also do something like HTML5 with some JavaScript and embed that in an existing web page on an existing app. So we've done things there with the knowledge base at work where we've embedded it in the app for a website. Just on the website, put a little chat bot and that goes straight to the knowledge base. You can even put it in EBS. You modify EBS page, have a button that will launch the knowledge base in EBS, and you can ask internal questions about like, how do I do this feature? How do I that feature for the business? The big thing to understand with the technology I'm going to show you is that the way you're going to access this in production is through that RESTful API. So you're going to have to get a little used to it. The good news is Apex makes it really easy to call the API. Digital Assistant also makes it easy to call the API. And even the HTML5 isn't that difficult to do. So this is not a difficult thing. I often do these at work. We do little proof of concepts and we're up and running in the day we start. These are very quick exercises to build it. Building it has some prep work you have to do. There are some limitations to it. Right now, you have to be in the Chicago region. That's where the AI technology is. So you're going to build this knowledge base in the Chicago region. You're also going to need an object storage bucket for the use case I'm going to show you. And this use case, I have pre-populated data into an object storage bucket with a whole bunch of documentation. I happen to be using stuff from the Department of Transportation in West Virginia. We took a whole bunch of stuff off their webpage and I put that into a storage bucket. And that has everything from their standards of building bridges, roads, also their driver's license, how to get your driver's license, all that stuff I just put into an object storage in the bucket and pre-built that object storage. Additionally, you don't have to do this with a storage bucket. A storage bucket is really great because I can put PDF files in there, I can put text files in there. I've even taken, I'll show here in a little bit, I take a Linux program and go to a web page and just pull the data off a web page, put it in a text file, then upload that text file to the bucket. So there's lots of ways you can get data in, but it doesn't have to be an object storage bucket. That's the way I'm going to show you to do it here. You can also do this with OpenSearch, with OCI OpenSearch. So if you're using OpenSearch, you can have the knowledge base go straight to an OpenSearch instance. And if you're on 23AI database, you can point it to do a vector search against data in 23AI. So you have a couple other backends, but here I'm going to show you that bucket. The thing you also have to be careful about is you only have a single type in a knowledge base. So once I build the knowledge base, it's going to be one of the choices. This is where Digital Assistant comes in, because with Digital Assistant, it can query multiple knowledge bases with that chat technology. So there's a neat uniqueness with that technology. But for a simple knowledge base, the easiest one, make an object storage bucket, put your data in there. Just be aware you have other things you can do. When you put that data here for the file, there's really two types of data it supports right now, PDF and text docs. Now, the good news is I can do things and I can easily convert a Word doc to a PDF. That's easy to do. I can even convert a web page to a text file. So there's a utility built into Linux called W3M, and W3M allows me to take that command, tell it to dump it, and I give the URL of the web page and the text file I want to dump it to, and automatically take the contents of that text page and dump it to a text file. From once I have that in the text file, I can then upload it to the object storage. This is really helpful if you already have like an existing wiki. You can have W3M scroll an entire wiki and dump everything into text files and then load those files into the knowledge base. And that's just a nice way of taking existing data and sucking it into the knowledge base. So it's a great technology to do that. So for the demo, I just did a PDF file. I'm going to show you how to build it. But in other environments, I'm going to use PDF files. I'm also going to use text files. I'm often going to scrape existing web pages too and put those in as text files. So that's how that's going to work. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in chat or holler. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to log into OCI now to create it. And I'm going to make sure, if you look here, I can see in the upper right, I'm in the Midwest Chicago region. And in there under AI services, under analytics and AI services, I have a generative AI agent. So you know you're in Chicago if you see that generative AI agent. If you bring it up in another region and you don't see it, you need to make sure you switch your region over to Chicago. Once I click on the agents, I'll come to the page where I can now create an agent. So I'm going to create a whole new agent in a compartment. So I already have a compartment built for my Cloud Lab compartment. So I'm going to create an agent. And now I'm going to put basic information in. Just as just a text description into it. My name, the compartment, a quick description of it. I can also add a welcome message to the agent. So I can control optionally what the agent will say when I start it. So in this case, my agent says, I am the oracle of all things, ask me a question, right? But I can make any text I want in there. I could have the agent say, I am the HR agent, ask me only HR questions, right? So you can even do a little prompting to tell your users what that agent is about. Now you have some routing instructions, and those are things you can do when you get a little more sophisticated with different tools, and we'll get into that later if we have time. Generally, for something this simple, I'm going to leave that blank. Now I'm going to add a tool, and a tool is where I'm going to get data from the knowledge base, where I'm going to get that information from. So I'm going to create a tool, and now I have a couple choices. I can use RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. The way generative AI works is it's a great way as generative AI to talk to the data and have the data come back in normal text. But it doesn't know data specific to your organization. It doesn't know your process docs. It doesn't know your database. So a RAG is a way of pointing to my knowledge docs, which in this case is the files that have been uploaded, is a RAG, and that's going to take that and augment what the chat engine would normally do. So it's going to take that large language model that understands your language, whether it's English, French, Spanish, whatever language, just make sure you have a model for your language. I'm going to point that to a RAG, and that's going to pull data specific to my environment, to my use case from that RAG to populate it, to teach it what it is. So here I've taught it about things about Department of Transportation in the demo. So I'm going to pick a RAG. I could also do SQL and go straight to a database. I can also do a custom tool and get more specific. But for a simple one, we're going to stick with a RAG because we're going to take all those PDF and text files and use those to create the agent. So I will select RAG. So here you have to give it a name and a description, and you might give it some custom directions around it, like you can guidelines for the large language model, like speak with a nice tone, or you can say be a little silly, or you could say however the persona you want it to take. You can give it some prompting of how you want it to behave. Then I'm going to add a knowledge base in my compartment. Here I don't have one, so I'm going to go create a knowledge base, which is going to bring up another dialog where I put in the knowledge base and I put in the type of storage. And here I'm using object storage. And I'm also going to enable hybrid search. Hybrid search is a cool feature because when it pulls in the documents, not only is it going to pull the documents for the text data, it can actually look at the pictures and learn from the pictures as well, which is really cool because a lot of the data we have in the world is visual. And this helps it helps to understand that visual data. We'll specify a data source. And here I'm going to pick the bucket. This is the bucket that I've already created. And then I'm going to say all files in the bucket. So I'm going to say everything in the bucket, just go ahead and digest it. Learn for that. So I'll say select all files in the bucket. The cool thing is this is also not a one-shot deal. So once I've created the bucket and I've trained the agent with it, if I add new files to the bucket, I can go back into the knowledge base and have it relearn with the new files I've added to it. So you can always enhance the training and add new documentation to a bucket when you're doing a knowledge base like this and have it just relearn based off the files that were recently added to it. In this case, new bucket, we're going to process everything in it. So now we're going to show that it's up and it's creating the bucket. That'll take it not too long, a couple minutes to start the digesting of it. Then we'll go ahead and create the tool. Once the tool's created, we'll see the tool here. We'll see it's created here for this RAG that we've created for the demo. It's our demo system. We're not going to create any others in this case, so we're just going to leave it this one tool. Now we have to set an endpoint. And an endpoint's an important thing to understand how it works. It's what you call for the RESTful API. So when I have an endpoint, this endpoint is what my RESTful API is going to query to talk to that knowledge base, to use the large language model, and to use the RAG, the alternate source of data. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to automatically create an endpoint for the agent. I can turn on a human into loop. If it hits problems, it can ask for help. I'm going to leave that off for now. And then I have this concept of guardrails. And the guardrails are really important because they help protect what you're doing. And there's three basic areas. There's content moderation. This allows you to take toxic or violent information out from the response. So you're not going to have the chatbot hallucinate or get some data and say, go kill somebody or go do bad things. It helps take that out so it won't talk about that. And that's really important because sometimes, depending where you're getting your data from, sometimes the chatbot might not do how you want it to behave, and you just want to make sure you don't accidentally hurt somebody or offend somebody or give somebody information that could be violent or toxic in there. And that's about protecting your users from the chatbot getting information you don't really want it to have or misinterpreting it. The next one is about you protecting the chatbot. This is protecting against prompt injection. So there are attacks people do for reasons where they put in really bad inputs into the chatbot. They ask specific questions to it, and they're doing that to manipulate the system behavior, to manipulate the responses. If you do that correctly, you can have the chatbot say some really inappropriate things, and you don't want it to do that. So you don't want to be in the news that your chatbot told something you don't want it to say. So I almost always turn that on because I don't want people trying to hack a chatbot in order to trick it into doing things you don't want to do. The last one is also an important one. That's PI, person identifiable information. This is really important because you don't always know all the documentation that you're pulling from. And sometimes you might accidentally have like somebody's full name, their address, a social security number, information you don't want it to share. So when you turn on PII information, it'll help the chatbot from sharing personally identifiable information. I find this incredibly useful when you're going against SQL because you never know what PII data is in a database, but you want to protect a chatbot, from accidentally talking about somebody's home address. Maybe you have your chatbot hooked up to your EBS system through SQL. You're not you're a little more advanced use case, and you have HR data in there, and now it knows somebody's home address. If you don't turn this on, somebody could trick the chatbot into telling you somebody's home address. So this is something that I would also normally turn on in an environment just to protect here users of data that I have, whether the data is in a database or it's in text files or PDF files. I want to make sure I don't accidentally have leak of personal information. So I'll turn that on, these guardrails. And the whole concept of guardrails is to make sure that you're protecting your users and you're protecting your data from malicious activity, whether it's malicious on purpose. Sometimes it's also just pure accidental, but it makes it a much better environment. So definitely turn on the guardrails. Once you turn it on, create it, you'll be able to review your chatbot. It'll tell you what's turned on. In this case, I just left the guardrails turned off because I was, we'll try to trick it maybe in here. But in this case, we have the settings. We're going to go ahead and create it. So it'll start creating it. And now here, be patient. Creating the agent sometimes can take a long time. Sometimes it'll take 10 minutes. Sometimes it takes 45 minutes. A lot of it depends on the workload and also the knowledge base. Depending on how many documents you feed into the knowledge base, the more documents you feed, the longer it takes for the knowledge base to digest it and understand what's in there. So this can take a while. Don't expect to be able to go in and create the agent and come back in 2 minutes and be able to call it. Just have some patience with it. It's not super fast at times, but it's definitely worth the wait. Often I'll create an agent, and that's a good time to break for lunch. Once it's done, we can test it. So we're going to test it really easily with a chat bot. So we're going to go back in generative agents. We're going to click on chat, and then we're going to pick our agent and our endpoint that we created, and then we'll be able to query the chat bot. So here I have a demo agent. I pick the endpoint, and as soon as I start up, I'm going to have a chat session. Now, the reason I like doing this first is because there's a lot of things here that you can use to validate the data. So here, if I ask it a question like, what are driver points? It's going to give me information, but it's also going to have is this view citations. So the citations are the source documents where it got the data from. So it's going to tell me the pages it got the data from, the text it got it from, and it's going to tell me where it learned the information from. So here it got the answer from the driver's license handbook, pages 27 and 28. I have similar stuff in the traces, where the traces will also tell me kind of the similar information behind it, with a little more detail of how it retrieved the sources and how it learned from them. And these are important when you're testing the chatbot, when you want to validate the quality of the data. You want to have the citations and traces turned on. One of the differences, the traces have a little more technical data, and they're really used by somebody building the chatbot. But often you might want to leave the citations on because when an end user says, hey, here's my information, and if you have all this documentation available, it will know where it is, and the user will now know the source document as well. At least for troubleshooting, leave them on so you can see how the AI thought and where it got the data from. You might want to consider leaving it on in production, but at least leave it on while you do the troubleshooting. So the way that's going to work, so here I have my test agent, and I'm going to say my demo agent, and I'm going to go pick my endpoint. So here's where I have it, and I have the question. I can ask the question like, what are points? Right, just what I did before, right? And it's going to come back and wake up. It's going to run the trace, run it. It's going to answer with the question we saw before with the points. And now here, because I just said what are points rather than like driver's license points, it said, hey, points referring to markings on a crosswalk is what it's thinking. And I can see where it got that idea from page 51 because I didn't say points on a license. Now, if I go under the sources here, I can see the documents it pulled from and the page numbers it pulled from, the text it pulled from. I also have metadata filters if those are turned on, to help refine that a little bit to make it a little more accurate. So I might refine my question like, what are points on a driver's license? I might refine my question a little bit because it talked about points on a crosswalk and it sent me to the manual. So here, okay, it's going to tell me what is about traffic violations and how that process works. So now it's working a little better because I gave it a better question. And you can ask all sorts of weird things like, what is the closest office to Charlotte or Charleston?
Erik,
So I might
when you
give it a
were
question.
we're
Yes,
almost over with the time. I wanted to remind you of that. And I did receive a question that hopefully you have the time to look at really quickly.
we are over already. Wow.
No, just 1 minute, but I just wanted, we still
Okay.
have
So, okay, what's the question? And I'll show real quick on how this works in Apex. And what I'll ask if you guys need help, I'm gonna leave this last slide up here real quick that has some of my contact info, so you can drop me a note if you have any questions on this. I'll be happy to ask them afterwards. I'm not used to doing 25 minutes. So
Yeah.
I thought I could get it fast, but okay, that's fine. I do apologize for that, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you go to build this on your own. But what was the question?
So how do we make the ingestion process to take the bucket and update the knowledge base automated so that we don't have to manually keep adding more docs to the bucket and rerun the job for agent to,
Okay, so there's
yeah.
yeah, so there's a really cool way to do that. So what I'm understanding is you have a bucket, you want to put data in the bucket, you want to automatically re-ingest the bucket and run the job. And there's an easy way to do that. First of all, for putting data in the bucket's an object storage bucket. So you don't have to go through just the web interface in OCI and drag and drop documents to that bucket. You can actually use a couple technologies like Fuse File System, which is one that I use a lot in Linux, and I will mount a bucket as a file system on a Linux machine. And then all I have to do is copy the file to that file system on the Linux machine and automatically uploads to the bucket. That's a really easy way to upload to the bucket. Alternatively, you can upload to the bucket through Apex. So I can take a file and upload it to Apex and have Apex put it in the bucket as well. And there's a couple other ways of allowing users or end users to upload data to buckets. So that's hopefully answers your question of getting data in the bucket. Now, telling the AI to retrain itself in object storage, OCI has the concept of an event trigger, an event. And one of the things I can do in an OCI bucket is when a file is uploaded, I can then have an event kick off, and that event can then call a function. So in this case, I would have a file was uploaded, I would have an event kicked off that called a function. I would have the function then look at the file and make sure it's an appropriate type of file. It's a PDF or text. And if it's a PDF or text, I would then have it call the RESTful API to tell the AI to retrain the AI with the new file in there and just automate it that way. So that's one easy way I can think of it. I'm sure there's other ways. One of the beauties of this technology is if there's one way, there's two or three others as well to solve a problem. But I do a lot of stuff with AI where I use those event triggers because data is uploaded to object storage and then I'll kick off a job to run the AI against the new data. I do the same thing with Vision AI. You upload a MP4, you want to do analysis against video. As soon as it uploads, the Vision AI, the object upload triggers a function. The function then runs the video through the AI and does the video processing against it. So that's kind of my go-to for that. So hopefully that answered your question in text.
Yep, that did because I received the message after that. So I do also want to leave a comment from one of our other Oracle ACE directors who's in the room with us. Johannes was mentioning about the available areas. It's also available in Frankfurt, London, and Osaka.
Thank you for that. I have not looked outside of the US. One weird thing where I work is we do pretty much US public sector. So I tend to only look at what's going on in the US regions. But it's nice to know it's in the regions outside of the US.
Great. So I
So
think,
and
yeah. All
yeah,
right.
real quick, you could also do this through Apex. So here's an Apex app, and I can ask it a question like, what are the setbacks for a driveway? A driveway is basically where a road, your driveway intersects the road. And I can ask the question, and this is through the Apex and Apex AI. Yeah, I know we call it HR chatbot because that was the first demo. Now we just have our kind of generic chatbot. And this is doing it, and this is called the setback. So here I ran the question. Here's the answer. Then we also have the source text. So it gives the actual data where it actually got the answer from. And that's something that you can easily do in Apex. If you guys have questions on that, drop me a note offline and I'll be happy to walk you through since we don't have time. I was going to go walk through how to do the Apex. We just don't have time for that. So I apologize for that, but it works really well with Apex. The beauty of Apex with Autonomous is you can set this up. It's a great environment to do the development. It's easy to add to the app. You could bolt it onto existing apps with Apex. And it's just a nice, easy way to run this for users to bring it up quickly. So hopefully everyone learned something. And I do apologize for the time, but If there's any other questions,
No, I think we're good. Thank you a lot. Thank you, Erik, for your time, for your presentation, and thank you everyone for joining us.